Welcome to Silicon Valley Successes. We interview experts and entrepreneurs to give the world access to the knowledge and experience that is here in Silicon Valley. Our mission is to create opportunities for those who seek them and to help you to become the next Silicon Valley success.
The topic of today's show is one that's been constantly in the news. And it's one that if a company faces and is able to overcome, it's been proven that they have advantages over their competition. The topic we're going to be talking about today is diversity and inclusion in the workplace. My name is Sean Flynn. I've lived and worked in Silicon Valley for quite some time, working with angel groups, incubators, accelerators, startups at all levels. So with that, I'd like to introduce our guests, Cesar and Irma. Cesar, could you please give a brief introduction of who you are and what you're doing?
Sure. So I'm Cesar Teague, founder of Resonate in San Francisco, and I typically work with multicultural business owners, small business owners who are challenged with finding clients and then figuring out how to present to clients so they can secure funding or they can secure more projects with them.
Interesting. And Irma, could you please introduce yourself?
Yes. Yes. Thank you for having us. Very excited to discuss diversity and inclusion. My name is Irma, and I'm the founder of the Zoepf, and we do diversity and inclusion at its core. I'm originally from Mexico, but I have been living in the U.S. for 12 years, and most recently in the Bay Area for 3 years, where I've been working with companies, startups mainly, and social entrepreneurs to build their culture and to develop and integrate their initiatives related to diversity and inclusion.
Interesting. So to start off, I guess the big question is, why is diversity and inclusion important? Cesar?
Well, I think since I'm focused on multicultural, I am a multicultural person. Right? I'm part Asian, part American, part Venezuelan. And so I think having those different perspectives is key. So when you have diversity, I think that you're going to be able to get different feedback from people, different perspectives that's going to add value. And research has shown that there are statistics out there that shows that it proves that having different perspectives and coming from different environments, different cultural makeups, is going to add value to any conversation and community.
So a company, a startup, when should they start thinking about this? When they're a team of 2 people, 5 people, 20 people, wait till they raise their A round, B round? When should this actually kind of influence their thought process?
Well, it can start as early as you want, as soon as they are ready for more creativity and innovation. They can start thinking about gathering diverse thoughts and perspectives that will help them with their business. As Cesar said, it's very important to create this or enable this space where you can gather the information. And when we talk about diversity, it could be diversity of thoughts in any way. So, racially, if we talk about multicultural, but also gender, also where you were raised, what you studied, or where you work. Everything matters in terms of when you bring it to the table for your business.
Okay, then question with that: if I just have a 4 or 5 person team, we all met each other in college. University, we just graduated, we're all engineers, we decided to build a product. Is there much diversity there? And where should they try to outreach to get more input, more outside views to that group? Any ideas on that?
Well, I can. All right, yes, absolutely. I mean, as I said, the diversity of thoughts come from anywhere. So if you start with your friends, thinking about something, just expand your horizons. Look out there. What is missing? Where are you getting your product or your service? What do you need to know? Like, say, if you are based in the U.S. and you are trying to reach the Indian population.
Oh, they're huge followers of this show.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Nice.
Yes, just wanted to throw that out there.
So, it would be great if you know about the culture, and it would be great if someone from your team is either from there, even better, or if you know about what they like, how they think, and how you could reach them better.
And would that just be reading a book on that country, or a history book, or how much knowledge would I need for that area to consider myself well in depth, well knowledgeable of that culture group?
As almost everything, it comes with experience, not from the books. I mean, the book can teach you maybe a little bit about the language, a little bit about what they do, what they like, but it's really interacting with each other where we learn the most. I've been seeing a lot of value added to a company when it really expands their perspective with different cultures and people. And there are huge examples with very successful companies. Like, for instance, if we talk about CEOs, the CEO of Google, Sundar Pichai, he's from India. Or if we talk about Elon Musk, who owns several companies, he's from South Africa. Or the former CEO of PepsiCo, she's a woman. Her name is Indra Nooyi, and she's from India as well. So you can see how their perspective have enabled their company, and it cascades down.
Well, what about early stage companies, early stage startups? Do you find that maybe there's less minorities that are starting startups in Silicon Valley, or they have challenges when they're here versus how's that ecosystem?
Well, I would say that, it's a good question. I think that, just to back up for a second, I don't think you start a company by saying, okay, I want to create a multicultural or a diverse company. It just doesn't quite work that way, right? Essentially, you're looking at expertise, and the folks on your team may come from different countries that would provide and bring to the table the expertise you need, whether they're from the Philippines, where they are great in the call centers, whether you're from India, right, with the technology that they have and the advanced skills that they have, which is why there's a lot of folks who come here. But the bottom line is everybody comes here to Silicon Valley because of the fact that this is where the money is at, right? They come here, right? And so some of the work that I'm doing at my work, for example, currently I'm working at a startup and based in San Francisco that's in a co-working space called Galvanize, right? Pretty well known.
Could you talk about a little bit about the startup that you're working with?
Sure, yeah. So it's in the co-working space based there, and because your question was spot on, I think within Galvanize, a 5-floor building, you have Google Launch, you have IBM, they have a school on the 3rd floor that's, that I think they just bought HackerOne. And so there's just, I'm hearing every day Norwegian, German, Russian, Indian, I'm hearing all kinds of languages, right?
Yeah.
And the teams within the building and the synergies are great. And I think there's something to be said there for that. Now, the company that I'm helping specifically is called Meeting Pulse.
Well, what does Meeting Pulse do?
Well, Meeting Pulse was actually founded here at a hackathon 4 years ago, which is amazing. So they founded the company at a hackathon over a weekend, and they received, a week later, $50,000 in funding because they won one of the prizes. But it was really great. And so the founder is originally from Russia and grew up on the East Coast. I think came when he was 11 and then grew up. And then, and so what they're doing is they're doing a platform and some tools for audience engagement. Audience meaning internally for employees and externally at events. And so you use your mobile phone, you can use an iPad, and so this is what they're doing to expand and essentially increase communication and collaboration between the teams.
Okay.
And one of the aspects that they just released is this translation feature. So if you're you're the CEO of the company or you're the leader of a team, and typically most teams are working virtually now.
Yeah.
Right? No secret there. The communication barriers are increased. It's a lot harder.
Yeah.
Right, to get this collaboration because of the time zones and the languages. So now, if you're leading a team and you want to have a team meeting and somebody isn't quite comfortable in the English language, well, you're probably not going to speak up as much.
Okay.
Somebody else may dominate it, right? And
Yeah.
so the particular application, which a lot of startups are using, is that people can send in their questions in their language and it translates it immediately into English so that the person who's moderating the questions can see this and respond.
Wow. How big of do you think language plays a part in the diversity of okay, let me step back actually. What do you think is more important, the language or the culture barriers to overcome that?
It comes together. I think that it goes in pair. As Cesar said, the language is a big factor, especially in the workplace, but so is the culture. So as a leader, as a thoughtful leader, you need to think about alternatives to make it easier or more equitable for everybody. And one of these applications that he's detailing, it's a big example of how organizations can be more useful or more resourceful for everybody.
So if there wasn't that language barrier, how many more resources do you think a startup would be able to access? I would guess it would be easier to outsource to overseas teams. It'd be easier to hire people globally, as that was mentioned, have team meetings, get your product into new markets. It sounds like your product would have many applications. Is this?
Yeah, it has a lot of applications, and of course part of it is also if you are going to come to Silicon Valley and you're going to try to raise money here, typically that needs to be done in English. And so part of the work is also polishing up the presentations and the pitch decks and doing that sort of thing, which there are a lot of people who are very good at creating that. The content, the delivery is another matter. So you have to be able to do both, right? As far as if you're working on that.
Are there any cultures that you'd say might have more difficulty speaking out and presenting to investors or speaking up in a meeting? Or how does that work exactly if there is someone that's more shy or from a more reserved cultural background?
Well, there are research on that topic, and some researchers or people segment the countries. You know, kind of like in general, one country could be more introverted, and in general, another country can be more extroverted. Or they embrace, for instance, risk, or they embrace sometimes, innovation, and some others are followers. But other researchers had found that that is not really a key determination for a startup or for someone to succeed, if you kind of generalize the country. Because, everybody's different and everybody has different perspectives and opportunities, honestly.
Interesting. And before the show, Cesar, we had a chance to talk. You'd mentioned that you have a sales accelerator program with marketing. Could you talk a little bit about that and the diversity and what people can get out of that program?
Sure. It's called the Accelerate program. So we chatted about some of the work I'm doing, helping minorities and or minority business owners, I should say, and multicultural business owners, right? So only because that's what I am, so I want to focus on that. So the Accelerate program really helps folks accelerate their sales, because when you're a startup and a small business, you're wearing multiple hats. Therefore, you're not focusing, and when you don't focus, what happens? It's all over the map. And so the program essentially helps folks to go from, finding and connecting with their ideal target clients, which there's a number of services that do that, that you've heard about. I'm sure a lot of people receive information from lead setting and appointment setting services.
Okay.
So that's part A. Part B is, okay, now that you have this ideal target client, you've identified them, you've connected with them, predominantly through LinkedIn is the work that I'm doing.
Interesting.
What do you do with that now? So then I also help in terms of the presentations and looking at the sales process and tools that people are using to maximize their closing ratios and the deal flow that they have.
Could you go back? You said closing ratios. Can you talk a little bit about that terminology, just in case no one knows?
Sure. So a closing ratio is just purely the fact that, out of how many people you've been able to present to, how many of those actually turned into a particular deal or turned into a client, a long-term client. And there could be many reasons why. So the idea is to raise that up and to increase that. And there's many sides of how to do that. So that's part of the Accelerate program, where we're helping a company with that aspect of it, plus some other social media work, such as posting videos relevant to the company and that sort of thing. So that's why it's an accelerate program.
So the videos that are posted, the sales training, is it tailored for different ethnic groups? Or, because I'm guessing a social media post here in the U.S. probably wouldn't have the same effect as a social media post in China.
Correct. Absolutely right. So it's geared here mostly in the U.S. because most people are here. They're trying to tap into the market here. And what's interesting is that in the U.S., it's people are very accepting of risk. So it's a very high risk tolerant society, right? So and so people are willing to try things. They're more prone to adopt different types of tools. And so this is why people come here. But still, your messaging is done here, right? And so you're targeting ideal clients based on industries, based on profiles. These are different things that we look at when we're working on a day-to-day basis, trying to outreach to or to do outreach to particular client groups.
Interesting. And Irma, could you tell us a little bit about when you have a new client, what kind of the onboarding process is? What does that look like when you're first meeting them and the steps you take?
Sure. So, if we talk about small business, for instance, sometimes, usually the leadership or someone from the CEO or someone from operations comes to me and with this request of, I want to have more diverse, board members, for instance, or I want to have more diverse network to reach more clients. And so, first of all, it's just to assess where they are, what they need, and what they want.
And that's done through exams or sit-down
It's
meetings?
A lot of data analysis. It's a lot of analyzing what they're doing and how they're working. If we talk about recruiting, if we go directly to their employees, with I know that it doesn't apply when you have 3 employees, but if you have more than 10 or 20, you start talking about, okay, where do we reach our future employees? And then it's just start thinking about it, or how do you promote people? Again, thinking about the employees. But then if you want to think about your board members, and if you want to say, have a very diversified group that will help you, then you need to start working on where to reach those people too, like where to find them and how to integrate them, and then how to make them work effectively. Because if they have with very different backgrounds, if you don't work with them in a cohesive way, it can backfire you.
Really?
Really.
So by adding more diversity, there's been instances that you've seen where it actually backfired and there's less communication, less ideas being exchanged.
Exactly.
What happens in a situation like that then?
Well, you need to look for help. And here, it's true. I mean, it's when you start thinking about diversity, you need to have cultural intelligence. That's what they call it. So it's how to communicate effectively, how to work effectively, regardless where you're coming from or what is your background or what do you like or not like. Just being more impartial and focus on the work, on the results, and that everybody wants the same thing, despite where you're coming from.
Is there a way for an individual to kind of train themselves to become more aware of the situation around them? Is that part of, I mean, I'm guessing that would be part of sales training as well, as marketing is kind of to read body language and know the scenario. How would you coach someone in that? Either, yeah.
I think that it starts for self-awareness. And then from there, everything is possible. But you need to be aware of where you are, who you are, and then what you want and how you present to everybody, to the rest of the world, right? And as a leader or someone that is leading a group, a company, you need to think even farther away. Not only about yourself and what you present and what you, show to your company, but also what do you want from your employees and how do you lead them?
Interesting.
Yeah, and not everybody's comfortable doing that, right? So I mentioned earlier about the multicultural piece, and we were chatting about that. English is not necessarily the first language of a lot of people, right? I think some 45% of Silicon Valley founders are immigrants, right?
Really?
That's,
I
you
didn't
were
know.
mentioning
Wow.
some names, and it's a pretty high stat. But not everybody's comfortable in presenting. If you have to be here, you have to present to clients, you have to sell yourself, you have, right? You have to pitch to audiences and panels. How are you going to do that? So that's part of the work that I do, and she does other aspects of that with helping folks whose English is not their first language.
And vice versa. I mean, when Americans go to other places, other countries too, they need to be aware of the other culture. They need to be aware how, like the essential part of the other culture, like, what is expected, what is must know, how you treat people and work, so you can work effectively.
That's one thing myself I've had a lot of experience with, meeting Americans here and taking them to China, and where in America they go, I had a Japanese friend growing up or something, so I understand all of Asia. You're like, oh God, no.
Exactly.
Don't sit too close to me during any meetings. But
well, you raise a good point, because even just the word Asian American, I mean, that really doesn't exist, because I'm part Filipino, but when you talk about Asian American, there's like 20 different groups that comprise Asian American.
Oh, and by the way, I'm half Japanese.
And you're half Japanese, so there you go, right? So, yeah, I mean, there was a survey done of like 190 countries, and only 10% of them were indigenous. So what does that mean? That means 90% of the world is multicultural.
wow.
Yeah.
So tell me, how did you guys decide to take this path for your careers? What led you in this direction to be this coach, be this advisor?
Well,
You got too excited.
I mean, what he was saying just made me think about it, and it's through all my previous experience, basically. I'm also multicultural, half Japanese, half Mexican, and I have been working in Europe and in the U.S., in Mexico. Working with many cultures, it stays something with you. And I have been a minority in many places. Minority of gender, minority of race. Either when I was living in Mexico, I was a minority. Because I was half Japanese, and then minority of my educational background, because I'm an engineer, so it's a minority.
Hey, go engineers! Mechanical.
So when throughout my experiences, I noticed that I didn't have the same opportunities. I noticed as everybody else, or the same voice, or the same recognition as everybody else. It's not that I wanted a special thing. It's just like, let's be, impartial and be equal, fair for everybody. So it led me to start noticing these patterns, and eventually, there is a whole bunch of people studying and working on this, luckily, on diversity and inclusion. And it got me very excited, because it got me to my core and how I can help, because I have been there. Leaders and organizations need these tools, and because everybody has the same intention, right? The good intention, but sometimes we're not aware. So I want to be the tool, that enabler for making people succeed.
Caesar, did you have a similar experience?
Yeah, so, similarly, I like to be the catalyst for somebody else in terms of helping them to raise their awareness, because you mentioned that earlier, that's really where it starts, right? So there's some tools out there like the Johari Window that we look at.
What's the Johari Window?
It's basically from two scientists that they share the name Joe and Harry, and they put their name together. It's a Johari Window, and it basically helps you identify, your blind spots. And
really?
Then again, it's kind of tough to identify a blind spot if you're not aware of it. So it's all about raising awareness from there, and then really just working with folks to see what's going on with them. Where are their limitations in terms of the cultural intelligence. They call that the CQ, the cultural intelligence. How can you raise that when you're communicating with employees or with customers? You really have to factor in a lot. There's a lot of things that you have to take into consideration, and beware of your assumptions. Because what happens when you assume.
Makes sense.
Exactly. So we have to be
God, no
careful of that.
editing on that one.
So yeah, so it's and I've been guilty of that myself, right? And so going into another country, and even though I have experience from different countries, and I've worked in different countries, and I've done training and coaching around different parts of the world, I'll still make mistakes because I assumed that it's just like back in San Fran, and people do it this way.
Okay.
For some little things, even as like the respect for timing.
Huh.
Each country views, different people, different cultures view different things with respect to time, with respect to relationships.
What percentage, or I'm just throwing this out there, of deals or opportunities do you think businesses miss because they don't understand the culture that they're trying to work with?
It's a super question. It's a super question.
I don't think that there is a right answer there, but there is a lot of missed opportunities, and you see it every day. Even in not even saying in organizations and in your daily interactions, because you assume one thing, and it's really not. You maybe miss a good friend, or maybe miss a good a food or movie or something. So it applies to everything.
Yeah.
So,
and the mode of communication, it's the mode of communication as well. So when you're talking with somebody in person, by phone, by email, it's the email that gets you in trouble, especially because of that lack of the body language and the things as far as the communication goes, right? So if you're a leader of a startup, if you're working on that, it's another thing you have to think about.
Interesting.
So I want to highlight what you said about the blind spot.
Say it real quick, and then we got to start wrapping up, but go on.
Well, the blind spot, and also how your brain works with quick responses, like with your first, intention and response. And then, like once you digest, you can really understand and then come up with better solutions. So it's better to take a few minutes before responding sometimes.
Great. Cesar, how can people get in touch with you?
Well, Resonate is the business, and so the website is resonatenow.org.
Interesting. And Irma?
It's theseabridge.com. It's my business, and you can learn more about what we do and how we could help.
Okay, so visit the website, The Zeabridge.
The Zeabridge.
To contact.
Exactly. Or my email, irma@theseabridge.com.
That's great. And I want to thank everyone for tuning into this week's episode of Silicon Valley Successes. Our guest next week, you'll be very impressed. There'll be a surprise for you. But with that being said, Cesar, Irma, what is one thing you'd like to give advice or wish someone had given you, told you a year ago or 2 years ago or when you started?
Wow. Focus.
Irma?
Believe in you and be perseverant.
Great. That's great advice. Thank you guys for coming on the show today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And I look forward, and for everyone at home, stay tuned for the after show as well. You can catch that on our YouTube channel.
Thank you from all of us at Silicon Valley Successes. We hope you found the information presented today useful in your path to success. For further information on accessing the resources in Silicon Valley, you may visit us on the web at siliconvalleysuccesses.com, on Facebook and YouTube. Thank you. And remember, we want to help you in your journey to become the next success.